This is Donald, the Pinstripe Chronicles, and I've got my co-host Rob here, and the leader of us all, Uncle Tats, my guy. So we'll be happy to discuss this 10-2 loss, but I think the bigger issue here is Hal Steinbrenner. He had some comments which has actually made national attention.
Yep.
One of which was that he was confused by Yankee fans being unhappy with this season so far. Interesting word choice, saying that he was confused. I'm sure that us as a podcast will help to enlighten him. But I do want to preface this by saying that owners don't normally talk. So the fact that we do have an owner who does talk does merit some credit, because the Jets owner don't talk. You don't hear James Dolan pretty much hides. He doesn't say too much. Occasional appearances on the K show, no more than that. John Mara does talk. He's pretty out there. He doesn't shy away. So that's like one. Cohen. I mean, we need to see more of Cohen. But he's obviously very active on Twitter, where he was until this season, where the Mets have totally bottomed out. But I think the general point is, owners don't normally be the face of the franchise. They usually hide, and I quite like the fact that Hal Steinbrenner does talk. I think he does deserve credit for that. He isn't hiding away, and so there is some element of accountability, and it actually comes from him. So that is a good thing. He actually does hold himself far more accountable than I've ever heard Aaron Boone or Brian Cashman. So I'm definitely not really in the boat where I'm just going to completely trash Hal Steinbrenner. Because I think that this isn't really his fault. Like, my God, I mean, he gave Aaron Judge whatever required to bring him back, and he did whatever required to bring in Rodon. So really, my again, 100% of the blame goes to Brian Cashman, but there are things that Hal Steinbrenner said which does deserve to be talked about and is concerning. One of which was the fact that he is confused that Yankee fans are unhappy with the start of this year. I don't know what's confusing about it. But let's pass it off. Let's start off with our leader, Uncle Tats. What did you think of what Hal Steinbrenner had to say?
I think his comments came over very tone deaf. I don't think he read the room really well. You cannot make a comment that you're confused about, the state of mind of a Yankee fan when you inherited this organization. So it's not like you just came into ownership a few years ago and have not been able to feel out the room. Okay. Mm-hmm. You watched your father operate with such passion. You couldn't. I can't comprehend how he did not inherit any of it. Hank did, and I think we're missing Hank right now, because Hank would have been that guy to kind of nudge him and go, "Hey, don't say that," But I think Hal just really, he should know better than to kind of question the Yankee fan, because he's been around for so freaking long. That's what frustrated me about the comments the most, was the fact that
anything in particular that jumped out at you that you were like, what?
No, it was, I don't understand why fans are so upset about the successes of the organization. It's what success? He's the one that pushed the narrative that, him, and from the top down, World Series a bust. Right? Yeah. If you don't win the World Series this year, really the season was a failure. And that should be the sentiment of every organization that plays professional sports, but more so the Yankees, because they put themselves, along with their fan base, on this pedestal of, we're the best. If you want to be better than us, you got to try and beat us. It's really not much of an effort for any other team anymore. So that also falls to the roster constructions through Cashman. But Hal's the one that keeps bringing this guy back. So Hal's got to do some credibility as well. So it's you can't just go around. You can't have a whole generation of World Series a bust and expect fans to just flip the switch where
Mm,
hey, if we get to the postseason, let the chips fall where they may, we still put a good run up. That doesn't work in New York. Maybe in Kansas City,
mm,
maybe in maybe with Cincinnati this year. If Cincinnati makes it to the postseason, they're going to think that, and they get bounced right away. Wow, what a season we had because it wasn't
mm.
expected. The Yankees, they're the one they put this expectation from the top that you have to make the World Series, otherwise the season was a lost effort. You can't just because you can't fulfill your promise to the fans. Don't push the blame on us that
Mhm.
we're holding you accountable to your words.
And Rob, what do you got to say, my guy?
Uh, on one hand, I understand where he's coming from. When why are people confused? Like, I know they're going to use the injury thing, and it's a legitimate excuse, but it's not the only excuse. Look, we all know, anyone who watches this sport knows that this team had Rodon and Judge and Bader, and Stanton didn't get hurt, and a lot of guys didn't get hurt to start the season. This team would be in a much better position. That's a fact. That's not just me being a Yankee fan and saying that. That's actually a fact because this team is loaded when healthy. However, I'm going to speak for myself. Why I'm upset is the organization's complete inability to get out of their comfort zone and try something different. They've been rinsing and repeating the same thing for over a decade now. And it goes back to 2011, 2010, when they broke up a few pieces of a World Series team to bring in unnecessary pieces like Matsui for Nick Johnson. We all know that was catastrophically bad. But it was around that time where they started to bring in like these past their prime players, like bringing in guys like Travis Hafner and Vernon Wells and even Andrew Jones, despite the fact that he was pretty good for us. You don't really want to be like Andrew Jones is your big move. And doing things like for a very long time, and you're underperforming. They've been doing this for a while, and they're doing it again. And they're not getting out of their comfort zone and just saying, okay, look, Josh Donaldson's not helping. We got to cut the dead weight and go with someone younger and go with the upside. Even though we're getting production from, those three minor league contract players, we should probably go with a younger option just because we can use the defense and maybe there's more upside there. They don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They don't want to try anything different. We just lost 10-2 last night. And for the second time in a week, we had to have a position player pitch. And that's becoming the story. It's like, wow, IKF hit a home run and he pitched. He's in the same conversation as Ohtani for something this year. I'm not excited about that. I don't want to see IKF pitch unless we're up 10-2 in the ninth inning. I don't want to see him pitching when we're losing. It's the second time in a week he's had to do that. Both times Domingo Germán started the game. And we were playing embarrassing baseball. Errors from our two Gold Glove caliber infielders at first and third. Donaldson's bobbling ground balls. Rizzo can't make plays. None of these guys can hit. It's a clown show out there. And this comes just days after Hal Steinbrenner's kind of like, why are you guys so upset? Well, that game, even though we just won the series, that game should be why we're upset because you're still treading out. And I'm not going to put Rizzo in this conversation, but you're still treading out some of these players that don't need to be here anymore. And I know apparently Peraza is dealing with something in AAA, but if he was called up sooner, he probably wouldn't be. But that's why I'm angry. It's just this has been over a decade now where the team just continues to try the same thing, even though they're trying to get with the times and embrace analytics and do all the stuff that the new age teams do. They're still bringing in guys that are past their prime and saying, hold the fort until this guy comes back. And we've been doing that every single year, waiting for a player to come back from injury and relying. I remember Brian Roberts was our second baseman to start a season not too long ago. So this has been a thing for a very long time, and I'm sick of it. I understand that this team, healthy, would win a lot of games. We'd probably be right there with Tampa Bay and Baltimore at the top of that division. It'd just be a dogfight for that top spot. Maybe not first place, but I think we'd be right there within a few games. But you're putting out a roster that is obviously not good enough without your best player. And that goes again to the conversation that we've had every single day for the entire season of how this team was put together. And it is hard to have plan B, plan C, plan D, all the way down to plan Z. But try something different. That's what I've been saying for a while, and this organization does not want to do it, and they continue to kind of give out the same mouth vomit that they want to give us every time they speak. It's the same thing, just worded differently. Like there were some things that I liked that Hal said, like we do want to win a World Series, and if we don't, it's a failure. And if we don't make the playoffs, I'm going to have to ask some tough questions, those kind of things. But then he also came out and said, hey, if we get there, anything can happen. Even though I get where he's coming from because he's right. We've seen it in the past. Teams can just get there and they win. That shouldn't be your focus. It's like, hey, if we get there, that we can do anything. No, your focus should be win a lot, win your division, or at least not be the third wild card team because that's a consolation prize at this point with the added playoffs. You should want to be better because you are the Yankees. You have set that standard. So there was things that I liked. There's things that I didn't like. But the whole point of, like, why are the fans upset? It's not because the team is struggling without their best player. It's because of the fact that we're doing the same things that have not worked for us over a 10-year period. And we're still trying to get that to light a fire under a team that it's not working. Try something different. Please, that's all I'm asking. Just go against your comfort zone.
Let's give a shout out to those who are in the chat. We got TC Steels, we got Jonathan, we got my guy Medina. A shout out to all of you. Thank you so much for joining in again. I wish everybody a good weekend when it comes. So let's get into this a little bit more. So we got Hal Steinbrenner. A couple of things he said that were interesting. He said, first of all, that no one's in the hot seat. And that includes Dylan Lawson, who we all know is a terrible hitting coach. But he did say that no one is on the hot seat. So you're not going to get your pound of flesh, Yankee fans. So that's obviously one thing that stood out. The next thing that stood out was he said that if the Yankees finished in third place or even if they finished out of the playoffs, but if they finished in third place, got in the playoffs, but were really bad in the playoffs, and they were, and he had the caveat here was 90% healthy, right? Because once again, they're looking for that out. He just gave you that out. He's giving you the out. He's giving you the out, that injuries, right? So if they're 90% healthy and then get knocked out in the playoffs, he's going to allegedly ask serious questions, right? But these questions have never once been asked since 2009. So how serious are these questions going to be? Or is it just going to be a case of lip service? Hey, Aaron, what happened there? And Aaron will give you his bullshit reply, and Hal will be like, thanks very much, man. How's your kids? And then that'll be the end of the conversation. That might be the difficult conversation. We don't know. But the fact is, he once again gave the out for the organization to use the injury excuse. So and there's no way that you can quantify 90% injury health, because it could be a case where Bader gets hurt. And we know how important Bader is because this Yankee team doesn't have an outfield without Bader, right? It could be the case that Judge gets hurt. And when we know that this team is obviously non-functional with it. So he doesn't quantify like how important this player is. He's just saying 90% health, which could be anything. So that says to me bullshit, for one, right? So right now, it looks like the out is going to be injuries this entire year, okay? I think we know that now. It's pretty clear because Brian Cashman keeps saying it repeatedly, and certainly Hal Steinbrenner is saying it now. So the fact is that your two leaders of the organization are once again using this injury excuse. And it is an excuse because guess what? The Yankees were in third place with Aaron Judge. With Aaron Judge having an MVP, with Aaron Judge having an OPS over 1,000, with Aaron Judge literally breaking Toronto Stadium all over the place, the Yankees were still in third place. So let's not pretend that this Yankee team were absolutely crushing it. And that's another thing about what Hal Steinbrenner said, was he said that, we need to go back to what we were doing in May. In May. Now, once again, that's another problematic thing, right? I don't give a fuck about May. And I don't think the Yankees do either, because the Yankees love to punt games and punt series for for future series down the line, right? That's what they do. That's how they manage games. So I don't think the Yankees pay too much attention to May, right? Um, yes, they were decent for that period of May, but they were awful in April, right? So it's like, right, oh great, this 2 week period, oh fantastic, but um, no one cares about May. We only care about September, October. Okay, that's the only month that matters. October is the only month that matters to Yankee fans, right? So this idea, oh, we need to go back to what we were doing in May. No, you need to go back to what you were doing in 2009 because things haven't really worked since then, right? 2017 is the only outlier year since 2009 where we could literally sit back and go, that was one hell of a good year. We played great. That was fantastic. You could even mention if you're giving credit to Aaron Boone, I think that one year where I think it was 2019. I think that was a good year. I think that was the Savages year. I think that was DJ LeMahieu hitting that big home run in the playoffs against Houston. I still think Houston cheated in that series. You could maybe make the excuse that was a really good year, right? That's 3 years since 2009, right? That have actually been good, right? 3 years. So this idea we need to go back to May is an anomaly. Is not right. That's not factually correct. You need to go back to when we were actually a very good team, and we haven't been a very good team in a couple of years, at least, right? We've not been a very good team since 2019, in my opinion. We had so many flaws last year. I really think that first place run that we had was
an anomaly.
yeah, because I really think that only 2019 we actually had a really good team, but it didn't go anywhere. So there you go. I don't care about May. No one gives a fuck about May. So I don't want to hear about May. Oh, we were great in May. It was 2 weeks. We've been pretty shit for every week other than that. So I think you need to. I think when he said that, that was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
What makes it even more confusing is, we talk about, that the term pump lineups and everything. You get these situations where it's not like where you've been on a 10-game run where everybody's just smashing the ball. And, you're playing a 3-game series. It's the third game. You've already, you had a lot of traffic throughout the first 2 games, and you want to get people off their feet for a game. You already won the series, right? So one game is not going to kill you. You cross your fingers that your bench players are going to be a little scrappy and keep the run going. They don't even get a run going. We win 2 games in a row, and everyone's like, "Oh, 2 games, that's a win streak." No, it's and then we get what we get last night. It's unacceptable. But at the same, we don't have the backup plan. They don't have we always have a backup plan, but they don't want to follow it. And get the players that we're looking for in the offseason or getting the players that we asked for in the trade deadline. They just can't seem to get out of their own head. Where we're the Yankees, we're going to get to October, everything will be fine. We're going to get our postseason check, and it's business as usual in Yankee land. It's not working anymore. They need significant changes. And when Hal makes that statement, if things go horribly wrong and there's going to be some explaining to do, he better, I'm saying this right now, he better follow through with what he fucking said. Because otherwise it's going to be even worse of a situation and more of a disconnect between the ownership and the fan base.
I'm just saying, though, that I think that he's given the out of injuries. I really don't think he wants to
make it. I don't want to hear that anymore. It's, we've been hearing
when he said, "Oh, as if we're like been 90% healthy in the playoffs," you can't quantify that. Now you can quantify 90% in any other area, but when you're talking about injuries, you can't quantify 90% because you don't know how important that player is injured. So they can make that excuse. It doesn't matter who it is. They'll be like, "Oh, we really needed him," because it was like Matt Carpenter last year. We really needed him. We couldn't survive without him, right? So we don't know what their players is going to be hurt going into October if there is an October. Rob, what are you thinking, man?
No, I think TC brings up a really good point where you said the blueprint was the dynasty years. And since then, that was such you can't repeat that time because that team was so good. No team in baseball has been able to do that. Not even the Dodgers, as good as they are built. They weren't doing what we did. The Rays, which are a really good team every year, they're not doing it. Who else? The Astros are the closest thing to what the 90s Yankees were. And they're not even winning every year. We were winning it. We won 4 out of 5 years. We almost won 4 straight. Like teams don't do that.
Yeah.
And you can't repeat that what that team was because that team was flawless in a sense. Like maybe a couple of things you can say. Yeah, you can say like we didn't really have a left fielder, right? Or maybe we didn't have like a fifth starter, but it had a damn good lineup. It had a damn good rotation when it mattered most, and it had a damn good bullpen. When we're healthy, we got all those things. But we don't have the players. Like we don't have a Jeter, right? That's going to come up. You can say that's Judge. He's probably the only guy that you could say you would take him from this team, put him on the 90s team. He would still go nuts. You can't really say that about anybody else on this roster right now. And so you can't, the Yankees want to try to maybe try to bring that back, but you can't. You can't recapture that magic from those 90s teams. But you can put together a really good team and stop relying on 35-year-old journeymen and 33-year-old players and hoping that this minor league contract guy catches fire. Again, up until Calhoun's injury, we had 3 on the roster starting almost every single day for us. Like that shouldn't be happening for a team that has World Series aspirations. And I get injuries are a case, but you like you said, you can't say, well, hi, if we're 90% healthy come October, because when was the last time we were? Last year, what happened? We were missing so many key players. Benintendi, LeMahieu, Scott Efros was hurt. So many Montas was pitching hurt as he was when he already got him, but we were dealing with so many things at the same time. Stanton was playing hurt. You can't quantify as the word you use. You can't prepare for October in the month of June and say, well, hey, if we're 90% healthy, I'm going to start asking questions. He might think it sounds good, right?
Yeah.
To be like, I'm going to start asking those questions, but you should be asking those questions now. It's like, why does this continue to happen to us every single year? Whether it happens in June, last year it happened in August, the year before it happened early on. Why did we go through these periods where it seems like out of all the teams that are World Series contenders, we're the only team that just looks comically bad. When we're bad, we look like we don't belong on a baseball field. And when we're good, we look like we can't be stopped. But there's really no middle ground with this team.
Yeah.
It's like we're either, like in May, we were really good. We had one of the best records, if not the best record in baseball in May. And now look at us in the month of June. Look at us in April after we lost Judge. It's right after we lose, of course, our best player. This is what happens. When we lose 99, they just forget how to play. And they're going to use that excuse. If Aaron Judge misses a lot more time than expected, we've got some good news on him yesterday, but it's amazing that one player makes this team look so bad. So, Hal, you can't prepare and be like, if we're 90% healthy, because this team has so many injury-prone players. Rizzo's back could flare up in 2 weeks or 2 months. Stanton could pull another hamstring. Judge could re-aggravate that injury when he comes back. LeMahieu could get hurt. We don't want to prepare for these things, but hopefully it doesn't. We don't want them to happen, but you can't predict injuries. It just happens to us every year. He should be asking those questions now. Why are our players constantly hurt? Why are we always losing games like this? Why are we relying on Domingo Hermans and Jake Bowers, even though he's been okay? And we have to call up.
What you were saying, man. You were saying, okay, you obviously you can't prepare for the injuries coming into October. You certainly can't say it in June, but it's almost like he's missing the point that maybe the injuries has actually means something in terms of what the way that we're going after players, the way that we're dealing for players that are injured and stuff like that. So again, that does go back to Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone or whatever, and how they're being treated. These players are always getting hurt, and maybe it's something to do with the way that Brian Cashman is always looking for players that are hurt. So, but it's really important that fans read between the lines, okay? So what his statement was is, I'll ask serious questions if we're 90% healthy, okay? Remember that 90% healthy, because that tells you everything. It's not that he's going to ask serious questions, right? It's the caveat, right? So what he really doesn't want to do is ask any questions. He doesn't want to do it. He's not that guy. And I'm not saying he doesn't care, because I do believe he cares. Okay, it's not that he doesn't care. It's just he's not that guy. He doesn't want conflict. He really doesn't want to be that guy. He wants to be liked, and I think that he wants to just have his management guys go and do their thing. That's really what he wants to do. He doesn't want to be a guy that wants to break this whole thing up. That's why he gave that caveat, right? Now, if he was really meaning and wanting to ask serious questions about this, the way and the direction that this Yankee team is going, he would not have added that caveat. He would have said, if we don't do well in the playoffs this year, I'm going to ask serious questions. He didn't say that. He said, if we're 90% healthy, right? Which is such a bullshit response, because you can't quantify one injury, right? It might even be one injury, but it could be a really key injury, or it could not be, but they could still use it as an excuse, because that's what they're really wanting, an excuse.
What's 90% though? Like, what's 90% to him?
You can't quantify it.
Because it could be everybody. Let's say the original 26-man roster going into the season is healthy, except for Aaron Judge. He's about 50% of your roster, considering the way he makes his offense literally 2 runs better when he's in the lineup. When he's not, it's a 3-run offense. When he's there, it's a 5-run. That's how good he is. So if he's hurt, you're basically 75% healthy. So how can you put a number on it? Like, what is 90% healthy to Hal Steinbrenner? Because if Aaron Judge is there and someone like, I don't know, Albert Abreu's hurt, we're like 99% healthy because he's not really contributing to a winning team.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge difference. What is 90% to you? That's why I didn't like that. I like that he said he's going to ask tough questions, but don't put that injury thing in there, because that's the excuse every single year, and I don't want to hear it. Because even with injuries, like even last year, I think our team was good enough to not get swept embarrassingly by the Astros. Right? Like that. Why weren't you asking the questions then? Why didn't you ask those questions last year? Like, hey, I know we lost LeMahieu and Benintendi, but we got embarrassed, guys. Why are we not asking those questions then? Why are we not asking those questions last August when the team just completely collapsed outside of one player and we had to bat him lead off so we can have some semblance of an offense? Why are those questions not being asked already? Why are you waiting till the inevitable happens and you do have an injury going into October and you can use that as another excuse? That's what we're angry about. I'm not angry that the team is I'm angry that we're struggling, but I understand why we're struggling. We need our best player. We need Carlos Rodon, even though the pitching's been pretty good. We need him. We need Aaron Judge. I get that. But stop doing the same thing you've been doing for so long that isn't working and start asking those questions now. You can make some tough decisions. I know we're not firing Boone. I know we're not firing Cashman, but at least be like, look, I'm giving you $300 million, dude. How are you not getting me a roster that's capable of surviving losing a player like Aaron Judge? The Braves did it with Acuna. The Astros were without Altuve for a while. They just lost Justin Verlander, who won a Cy Young. Guess what? They're not in first place, but they're still in a playoff spot, and they're kind of struggling, but they're surviving it a little bit. They don't look embarrassingly bad.
One of the best shortstops.
Yeah, they let Springer walk. How many players did they let go? So why is that with $300 million you can't survive without Aaron Judge?
Yeah, there was a comment on the Yanks Morning Brew with Hector and TC yesterday that I saved on my phone. All right, and Casey Funtime put this comment out, and it fits right into what we're saying. And I told him I was going to steal it. So Casey Funtime, here you go. He said, if I managed money like Cashman, I'd be broke, divorced, and homeless. But he's commended and living the dream. You know, so it's how true of a statement is that? That's crazy. You cannot just you're given the keys to a fucking castle, and you're treating it like Fort Knox, where you don't want to let any of the money out. And you don't want to share the wealth because you just want to keep stuff in your pockets. You're making these. Yeah, we understand. You know, sometimes the market with the Yankees can be very tough. They're going to try to handcuff us, and they're going to push for all our best prospects. And we hold on to our prospects, but we don't use our prospects. So what was the point? Why bother not making those deals? Which is why during the last trade deadline, I got to that point where I'm like, if they're willing to move Soto, make the call. You know, if they want Floria, if they want Domingo, Dominguez, they can take Domingo too, but they can take Dominguez. because at least we're getting the finished product. So it's they're not. We've said it over and over again over the last 4 years of this show. It's not the fact that they don't make the moves. It's not that they don't spend the money. They just don't know what the hell they're doing when they make those moves.
It's a really good point that you make right there, and there's a really good point here. Most New York teams just spend the money; they just don't build teams. It's embarrassing. I have to completely agree with that in every way. The Mets haven't built a team; they've spent ungodly amount of money, but they haven't really put together an actual roster, and that's very much the case here. This is a Yankee team which is basically built around Aaron Judge, which is fine, but he is everything. You take him out, and this thing falls apart like a house of cards, and that is where you have a shaky foundation. You need to have a roster which can at least play 500 baseball, or just slightly below, just to make sure. And it'd be fine. I wouldn't complain, but we're not even close to that. We're such a bad team without him. It's an unwatchable product without him, and that goes fully down to Brian Cashman. There's no one else to blame on that. But going back to Hal Steinbrenner, I give Don LaGreca a lot of credit here because he asked a lot of good questions, right? One thing that he asked, which I liked, was you keep saying that, okay, if we don't win a championship, you do consider it that, they failed, right? But that's been the case since 2009. And how do you keep telling these fans that, yeah, okay, we have a championship caliber team, we don't win the championship, but then nothing gets done. Like you bring everybody back without any accountability. So, like, what do you say to those fans? That was a great question, and he just said he didn't really have an answer for it. I'll be honest. He didn't say anything. It was, again, lip service. Oh, I think Brian Cashman's doing a really good job. I think Aaron Boone's doing a really good job, without actually giving any evidence that they have. And then what he said was really interesting at the end of that statement. He said, the fans will tell us if they are dissatisfied. So once again, he's challenging the fans to not show up. Because what he's basically saying is, we're breaking records on yes, and the stadium's full every night. So what's the incentive for me to break this whole thing up? That's what he's saying. So he's putting it once again on the fans, basically challenging that we are the vocal minority rather than the state of play. But he's basically saying, it's on the fans to let us know. The fans pretty much do let you know. And he also said something that was interesting. He says he doesn't listen to the radio. He doesn't read the newspapers. He doesn't watch podcasts. The only thing that he does is he asks his media guy, Zillow, what's going on. So it just sounds like he's tone deaf and not tuned in to the state of the Yankee organization from the fans' point of view. And when you have an owner that is not involved and he's asking his media guy to answer those questions for him, says he's not that hands-on to me. Rob, what do you take out of that?
I think he's lying a little bit because he mentioned something. He goes, for a lot of the talk that I'm not like my father, there's a certain, like he mentioned, he knows about it. He watches stuff. He listens. I know there's no way he avoids everything living in New York. There's no way he doesn't turn on a television or doesn't stumble upon something on the radio. There's no way that doesn't happen. There's no way Jason Zillow's telling him every single thing that people are saying, because that would mean that Zillow's got to be on Twitter 24/7 and listen and have a burner account and being like, so what this person said, there's no way. So he knows what's going on. And I know Li just said that he's not the problem. It's Cashman. That's absolutely true. But
who gave him a new contract?
That's what I was going to say. He's the one that continues to bring him back, not just for 1 year, but for 4. You know what your problem is. You have a guy who, yes, Brian Cashman's had a lot of success, and I don't like that people continuously say he had nothing to do with the dynasty years, because he did. He may not have been the GM, but he was right there with. Stick was the one that gave the recommendation to give Cashman the job. So he wouldn't have done that if he didn't think he can do it. However, we've all come to an agreement that it is way past the time that he should have been gone. It's not because he's so bad at his job. It's because the game has passed him by. But Hal Steinbrenner doesn't want to let that go. And that's a tough question. It's like that'd be a very tough decision. It's like, look, he's done so much for this organization. He's given us winning season after winning season. He's got multiple World Series under his belt. Not one for a long time, but he does. You got to make those tough decisions. Other teams in baseball have done it. Other teams in sports have done it. For very decorated front office members, like they let guys go. Why is it that we've had the same guy in the same position for 25 years, and it just seems like he doesn't have any sort of nothing that he can do is going to be a bad decision, because clearly it's not, because you haven't won a World Series. You get embarrassingly swept in the playoffs last year, and you get a 4-year extension for it. Like, these are my questions. Like, I know Hal's not to blame, and I know that Hal cares. There's no way he doesn't care, because he doesn't want people complaining about this team. He does. He's not his father. He doesn't need to be his father, because George wasn't perfect. I don't care what anyone says. George was great, but he wasn't freaking perfect. There were a lot of really bad Yankee teams when he was at the helm. So let's just get that out of the way. But he also needs to be a little bit more like his dad and realize there's something wrong here, and I'm the one who has to make these decisions, because Cashman can't fire himself unless he retires, and we know that man's not retiring. So it's up to Hal. It's up to Hal and the people around him to be like, we got to make a tough decision here. Something's not right. What is it? Maybe we got to look right below us. I don't think he wants to do that. That's like, and again, I know he cares. I know he does, because if this team loses and people do stop showing up, even if it's a little bit, he's going to start losing money, and no businessman wants to lose money.
What's interesting is you're saying right there is that, eventually you have to say, thank you so much for what you've done, but it's time to move on. They've already made that tough decision with Joe Torre.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Torre won championships every single year for a while. Every year they were in a World Series, right? And eventually they got to a point where we're like, okay, we need to go a little younger, we need to go a little fresher. But why is Brian Cashman above that, right? Because I'll be honest, I didn't see immediate outrage when Joe Torre was let go. And there was far less reason to let Joe Torre leave than the situation with Brian Cashman, right? And all we get is Hal Steinbrenner, the media outlets, media guys, Brian Cunty, right? Saying that Brian Cashman, how could you possibly say anything bad about Brian Cashman? He's giving you this, that, and the other, right? What about Joe Torre, right? Literal Hall of Fame manager. We ended up replacing him for a younger guy. Whether you like the decision or not, they made that decision. Why is Brian Cashman above that, right? Because Brian Cashman has achieved a hell of a lot less, right? And a far, far bigger sample size, right? So why is he allowed 3 decades? So, again, it's just interesting that they have changed the narrative. And at the end of the day, you're never going to get Brian Cashman to fire Aaron Boone, because he told you. He's like, as long as we stick to the process and as long as they do what I asked them to do, they're never going to get fired, right? So the only hope that we have is Hal Steinbrenner, and I don't think Hal Steinbrenner has the stomach for it. But he needs to have the stomach for it.
Yeah, well, one thing to remember with Torre ended up, they didn't bring him back a lot because he actually had a pair of balls and actually managed the team. And, when they would come and suggest things to him, he would pretty much tell them, hey, I'm the manager. You just send me the players and I'll handle it from there. Stay out of my way. You don't have guys like that anymore.
But Brian Cashman didn't like that.
And then another lesson for some of the younger kids, that are becoming fans that hear us all talking about George. The dynasty was built while George was suspended from baseball. It's not like he had this hovering, thing where he was the absolute architect of the whole thing. It was not. Okay.
Like Michael.
Stick Michael was that he was the architect. Oppenheimer with the scouting. They put this all together. So just keep that in mind when you guys, when younger fans want to keep chirping, well, when George was here. Well, when George was here in the 80s, we weren't really that good. He couldn't get it together either.
Thank you.
They had all those bats. You had Mattingly, you had Henderson for a while, you had Winfield, and they couldn't win because they never got the pitching right. The pitching was right, they didn't have the hitting right. So this isn't some brand new thing that Yankee fans through the generations are dealing with. So just keep not that I'm a historian, even though I've been around since the beginning of
No, you're spot on. That is absolutely factually right.
You sometimes just peel it back a little bit and just go through the timeline of how the Yankees handled some adversity.
Yeah.
We went through a decade of shit.
But one thing about George is he did learn. After the suspension, he did become a far better owner, right? In my opinion, because I think if you're looking at this thing right now, we've got Hal who's in the opposite end of the spectrum to his dad, okay? His dad was overly aggressive, okay? And I'll be honest, I think Hal's overly passive, right? I'm okay with a little bit of middle ground. I'm not a guy that's going to call for firings every freaking year if we don't win a championship. It's not realistic, okay? If I feel that we have a championship caliber team, which we've only had a couple in the last 5-10 years, right? And they completely tank out, that's when I want people fired, right? But if we play above our means and we play pretty well and it doesn't work out, then I'll assess it on that basis. I'm not a reactionary fan calling people to be fired just because they're not winning games, right?
No, it's accountability.
But I think that Hal Steinbrenner has given far too much of a pass to Aaron Boone, and he's far too much of a pass to Brian Cashman, because Brian Cashman, basically 90% of his moves have failed, and not just badly, but spectacularly. Like, so badly that it would sink most franchises. But luckily, the Yankees have a ton of money that they're still able to stay afloat. Brian Cashman has made so many mistakes that if he was in any other franchise, he would sink them for about 3-4 years, right? And that is a fact, especially with that Josh Donaldson trade. Right. So Brian Cashman should have been fired for that alone. Okay, so that's why there's certain fans that are upset, right? Because I think there's a lot of nuanced fans out there that can see it, going, okay, you know what? 2017, I would never have fired Joe Girardi because he actually played them. He actually managed them far better than what was on the field, right? But Aaron Boone, he did a terrible job in 2018, and that 2018 team was stacked. 2019, you know what? I'm giving Aaron Boone a pass for that because I think we were a better team than the Astros, and for some reason it didn't work out. But I think a lot of it was to do with the Astros doing a little bit of cheating, right? But then 2020 was a complete and utter disgrace, and 21 was a disgrace, and 22 was a disgrace. So I think there's more of a sample size to me that Aaron Boone should have been fired. So again, I can differentiate, and that's why I don't like when I get Hal Steinbrenner, Brian Cashman, and the media basically telling us, suck it up. I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, you can go back even to how many times has Cashman not made a move, right? Like, go back to the Cliff Lee thing. We could have had Cliff Lee, and we would have probably won another World Series during those 2010s. But he held back on that. He didn't get Garrett Cole in 2018 when it would have cost him virtually nothing, and maybe we get past Boston in that division series. There are so many things. There's so many examples of players that he couldn't get or didn't get, and players that he could have signed, and all these different things that he's let pass by. But going back to the whole George conversation, once the dynasty started to faded out, and even though we still had the core four, but once we lost pieces like Tino and Brocious and even Knobloch, Paul O'Neill retired, he tried to compensate by just spending. And those teams in the early 2000s were stacked. Let's not forget that 2004 we got Alex Rodriguez, who, roided up or not, was the best player in baseball. We put him in the same lineup as Gary Sheffield and Derek Jeter, and then we got Dame added to it. We had Matsui, we had Giambi, we got Posada was still around. These teams were loaded. And they didn't win. They couldn't even get past the first round in a lot of those years. And then we missed the playoffs in 08. Let's not forget, Mike Messina was in the rotation. Chien-Ming Wang was pitching really well. This team was loaded, and they didn't win. So that's what I just want people, because going back to what Tats was saying about a little history lesson, that's why I want people to dial down the whole if George was still alive thing, because it wasn't freaking sunshine and rainbows when George was around. The early 2000s were rough. After the dynasty, it was not a fun time. We were getting bounced out in the first round. We had that embarrassing ALCS in 04, right? We lost in the World Series in 03. Angels knocked us out in 05. 06, I think it was Detroit. 07 was Cleveland with the Bugs. Missed the playoffs in 08, and it wasn't until they said, we have to win. So they went and just spent an ungodly amount of money to bring in CeCe, Teixeira, Burnett. We brought Pettit back. We traded for Swisher. And then what happened after that? They went back to their old ways and just like, let's just make stupid moves, and we didn't win again after that. So it has been a pretty rough going back to once the dynasty faded out. We have one championship since 2000. It's a 20-year period now, 23 years. And unless we win this year, that's a long time for the New York Yankees to not have a World Series. And you think about just one in 2 decades, that's a while. And the fact that we haven't even been there since 09 is another issue. So I just want to say, like, Hal doesn't need to be like his father, but there are certain things that he needs to be like his father when it comes to like making tough decisions. George would fire people just for the sake of doing it. We know the whole Billy Martin story. Fired him, rehired him. It was like a comedy show at that point. They even turned it into a joke when he had his press conference and he got fired at his press conference. But he needs to make these tough decisions. Brian Cashman, you could have just ran out your contract. Hey, retire into the sunset. You've done your thing. Go have fun. Enjoy your vacation. We know he works a lot, even though he's not doing a great job. He's not doing a terrible job either. Not bottom 5, but whatever. You could just let him go. Let him go into the sunset. They could have brought Kim Ng into his position, right? Because she's doing a great job with the Marlins. We could have had a much different look to this front office, a lot more modernized look to this front office. And maybe, I don't know, I can't tell the future, but it would give fans a reason to believe that things were going to change. Because, again, it's been too long to be in one position. 25 years as the general manager. I'm 31. I was 6 when this guy got his position. I was 6 years old. I was in kindergarten. Come on.
I'm 37, man, and I've basically just all been Brian Cashman. It's incredible how long he's been in charge, and credit to him for his longevity, and he's brought in success, but it's long since passed him by. But the biggest thing is he's got a bit of a bunker mentality because he's only surrounded himself with yes men, right? You see the amount of people that go overboard with praise for this guy. I mean, Gene Afterman called him the Wizard of Oz, and that's not even hyperbole. She actually said it. He is the Wizard of Oz. I mean, give me a freaking break, right? But that I don't want to go too off topic. We'll go back to Hal Steinbrenner. As I say, I credit the fact that Hal Steinbrenner actually did that interview. I think that's pretty cool, right? And again, I don't put a lot of the blame on him. But I think when we're looking at I know that he wants to be different from his dad. He did always say, oh, my dad wasn't always well liked and stuff like that. I don't care if he's liked or not, right? I'm only interested in winning. But there's such a vast difference in the way the Yankees are managed, right? Not in which they spend. I still think that they spend comparatively okay. But it's the fact of the lack of accountability. George Steinbrenner, there was never once a question. With George Steinbrenner, there was never once a question of accountability, right? There was never once a question when you were sitting there and you were watching your team getting disgraced, right? There was never a question whether the Yankees were upset about it, right? Now, you could fool me because honestly, I for the way they play and the way they're managed, and then the way they're managed all the way up through Brian Cashman, honestly, I'd be shocked if they gave a shit, right? And that was never the case with George Steinbrenner, right? Now, whether he went overboard or not, yeah, he probably went overboard. But hey, what did he always say? And I love this quote, right? Show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser. Okay? And the Yankees are doing a whole lot of losing and a whole lot of good losing, right? A whole lot of nonsense, a whole lot of roofs, a whole lot of rain, a whole lot of injuries, a whole lot of, well, if this happened and that happened and this happened, then we would have won. A whole lot of, well, the Astros cheated. That covers us for another 5 years. I mean, it's a whole lot of excuses, a whole lot of, well, you know what, if that happened, then we would have won, right? When you can't quantify it, you know what I mean? And that is where there's a problem. That is where there's a huge problem with Hal Steinbrenner's ownership. That's where Hal Steinbrenner does need to channel his dad and be a little bit more aggressive. And I'm not saying fire everybody. I'm just saying don't be afraid to. And I think he's afraid to. And no business can be run when you're afraid to make changes. No good business can be run that way. Okay, so he needs to be far more diligent in that, right? And he needs to move personal friendships aside, and he does need to be asking serious questions. So I really think that that's the one thing that I would ask him to do in future, because he spends, okay, he's a decent dude. Like, I quite like listening to him. I much enjoy listening to him than I do Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman makes me want to throw my water bottle through the television set, right? Like, I can't listen to that guy because he just speaks in circles. He speaks in politics, and I can't deal with it because I'm thinking you're a lying bullshitter, and I can see it from a mile away. Hal Steinbrenner doesn't give me that impression. He doesn't give me the impression
He's clueless
or a liar. He seems like a decent dude. It just he just seems like slightly too nice to be the owner of the New York Yankees. And I think that he does need to channel what other owners are like. Like John Mara, he's a very nice dude, but he isn't afraid to make serious changes when required, okay? And I do think that Hal Steinbrenner is terrified. He's absolutely terrified of doing it. He doesn't want to step on anyone's toes, and no really good owner does that. That's big.
Well, that's why I really go ahead, Rob.
No, go ahead.
That's why I really don't want to bash Hal, because at least he's one of the rare owners, like you were saying, to kick off the show. He's one of the rare owners that will address the public, and he's actually very good with the timing of it. Mm-hmm. It's not like, sorry, Nick, but this is the truth. It's not like Cohen, where when they were winning, he was out in the public, boasting his chest, and then when they started to decline, it was like, where the hell did he go?
Yeah, right.
Hal's the other way around. When they're doing really well, he sits back and he lets the organization handle itself. Mm-hmm. When he needs to address the media or the fans because things are starting to really go off track, he doesn't hesitate to kind of jump in front and be like, all right, this is what I'm looking at. This is where my head is. I kind of think he he deserves a little less bashing as opposed to somebody like Cashman or Boone if they sat in the media. But if he really wants a pulse on what's going on, stop catering to the media people that are in your pocket. Go off track a little bit. Go outside the pocket. Have a press conference with content creators. You know what I mean? Don't go to the people that are working for the organization, working for mainstream media, working for Yes. Go on the Fan. Go on, call in, have a day where
I think that's the plan with Aaron Boone going on Talking Yanks. I think that was what they were hoping with. But unfortunately, Aaron Boone is such an arrogant asshole when he's asked questions about his management that it kind of blows up in his face. So
he got defensive the other day with
he was extremely defensive. He was a complete asshole.
But no, I don't. Hal doesn't need to. He doesn't need to go on shows with podcasters because could you imagine if he was on a show with like some of the people that we talk to on here? Like they'd be tearing him apart. It wouldn't be. And you'd have to dial it down because this is the owner of the team, for crying out loud. You can't just be like, why aren't you firing this guy? Because you're not going to get an answer. You can't just go to the fans and be like, ask me anything because it's not going to go well. I mean, there's some people that are going to ask questions, but him doing the show with Kay is fine because it's not like he just danced circles around the question like Cashman will say. But what did Donald play for us the other day? do you like their commitment? Do you like the way they're playing or whatever? He said, well, I like the way they care. He danced around the question, right? He doesn't.
Do you like their approach? And Brian Cashman was like, I like their care.
I like their care. Exactly. So, and going back to a point that Don made earlier, and then this is going to be a little football talk for a second. John Mara, it took him a long time to get out of his comfort zone because he didn't want to hire outside the organization. It was only until things got catastrophically bad where the Giants were kneeling from their own 5-yard line that they decided, all right, well, let's just stop doing what we've been doing, which isn't working. And they went outside. They got Joe Shane. They got Brian Dable, and things are looking much brighter than they have in a very long time for the Giants. Hal Steinbrenner can learn a lot about his team, about what he needs to do from the New York Giants, because John Mara, for a while, as nice of a guy as he was, I couldn't stand him because it was him and it was Tisch that did not want to go away from what their comfort zone was. We're going to fire a GM. Who's going to replace him? Well, we know Dave Gettleman. He's been in with us before. Let's bring him back. Oh, we're going to fire a head coach, but not the GM. What are the New York Yankees doing? Even though I didn't like Girardi very much, they fired Girardi. They let him go, but they kept the general manager. And it's just this never-ending cycle of keeping the same guy who's the real problem. What was the problem for the Giants? The general manager. They kept him around for so long. So Mara and Tisch finally got out of that comfort zone, went outside the organization, let Joe Shane hire his guys, let Dable hire his guys. The GM and coach work hand in hand. The owners just sit back and let them do their thing. That's not what's happening here. Even though he's letting Cashman do his thing, it's a thing that's not working because Cashman and his group of cronies are not running this team the way it should be run, because this team should be winning. Even if they're not winning every single year, they should be getting to the ALCS more often. They should be in the World Series more often. They should be that team that wins close to, or if not more than 100 games every single year. They should be an absolute juggernaut with a $300 million payroll, and they're not. And that's the issue that I have, is Hal Steinbrenner's letting them do their thing, but it's clearly not working, and it hasn't been working for a long time. So he needs to get out of his comfort zone the same way that John Mara and Steve Tisch did for the New York Giants. And even though it's two different sports, two completely different games, it's a very comparable scenario for those two teams.
I like this. Steve Schuman's right. Case said this. Hal has always been on the show many times, even before the Jeter booing day. And I actually want to draw attention to that Jeter booing day. I didn't really like the fact that fans booed Hal Steinbrenner on Jeter Day because I don't think he necessarily deserved it. I don't think he's done anything necessarily that terribly wrong. I mean, when asked, he's paying the money for these guys. The problem is he's trusting the wrong people, but that is a big part of being an owner. I also don't like the fact that Hal Steinbrenner is more concerned about looking nice. Like he's like, my dad wasn't well liked. Like, bro, like no one liked him because he was winning all the time and he was cutthroat and he was doing what was required to win, right? I'm not interested in nice. I'm interested in winning. So there's a big difference there. But that's what the Yankees are now. They've changed. They are changed. They have completely changed. They used to be the big bad Yankees. Now they're kind of like, they're trying to be the little engine that could with a $300 million payroll, and that's embarrassing. So there's a final question that I quite like from Don LaGreca, and this is more to do with the media aspect, because he was like, you know what? Don't you think that with Peacock and with Yes and with Amazon and with Apple that maybe you're asking a little bit too much of Yankee fans to have to subscribe to all these things just to watch your team? And Hal Steinbrenner, that was the only question Hal Steinbrenner completely danced around. He stayed away from it, right? Now, I know some of it were baseball contracts, but there are some things where I would have liked Hal Steinbrenner to say, you know what, we will review it because, you know what, we know that our fans are passionate and it's not necessarily, I don't know how we'd word it, but something around the case that, you know, we don't want fans to pay more than they need to watch their team. But he didn't do it. He ignored that question. And that's kind of sucked because that is an issue. It is definitely an issue. It's a baseball issue, but it is also a Yankee issue because fans, and especially my two co-hosts here, that have different apps that they have to watch just to watch a Yankee game. I mean, that's too much. It is ridiculous.
It's expensive enough to go to a game, and usually, if you can't always afford to go to a game, At least you had the comfort of just sitting home and you could still watch and engage in your team. Now you're spending just as much money as if you were going to go to the game on all these different applications, all these different apps to watch these games. It's like spinning a wheel to see which channel it's going to be on, what app it's going to be on. It's ridiculous. We used to just have two. There were two. One, it used to just be one option, which with Channel 11. Then they created the Yes networks. Now you need a cable.
I got you, D-Rod.
Yeah, it's now you need Amazon, you need Peacock, you need Apple, you need what was it last year, the year before? It was YouTube TV. There was a million different things you had to watch. For all these games, it's getting out of control. And it's
all House said to answer it was, "Oh, that's Gen Z. Give me a break. Give me a break."
It's greed. It's greed. That's what it is.
It is.
I'm not paying $10 to watch a terrible product on Apple TV. It's a terrible. First of all, the announcing is terrible. It looks fine, like the camera work is good, but the announcing stinks. It looks very generic with the scoreboard. Just give us. You have MLB TV, and they have blackouts. Just put everything. You can have nationally televised games. You can still have each team. I know that Bally Sports, I think, is gone now, but a lot of teams had the Bally Sports Network. But if each team had their own network or something like that, but you have the MLB TV app, just put every single game on there. You can have an MLB Network special. You can still have Saturday night on Fox, Sunday night ESPN. You can have these special things, but you have a freaking app for your league. I don't know why all sports just don't do this. Make every game available for a certain price per year, and you get to watch every single game no matter where you are. Hey, if I was a Miami Marlins fan, even though I'm living in Miami, I can just still pay for the app, and I get to watch their games. Why is it that I get blacked out? That's not fair. It's so simple. Instead, we got to have 7 different streaming services so I can watch baseball one game. It shouldn't be that way. And Hal Steinbrenner gave a terrible answer to that question.
Was a terrible answer. I was very disappointed by that. Because everything else, well, no, there was a lot of answers that pissed me off too. But you could at least kind of make an excuse for some of them. He literally he completely ignored that question, and that sucked. That sucked because that's about your fans. That's about fans paying through the nose just to watch your product, and it's not a good product. As Rob says, it's not a good product right now. What is the incentive for anyone to even want to watch without Aaron Judge? Because Aaron Judge makes this team even look like a baseball team. Without him, they don't look like an actual baseball team. They don't look like they belong on a Major League Baseball team.
Yeah, it's, and half of the time the apps aren't in sync with each other anyway. So, what happened when we were doing the play-by-play on the games? I'm sitting there on the Yes app, and while you guys are watching, not even from New York, even more, towards Donald because he's out of the country. And I'm 3 batters behind on the app than what everybody else is watching. So they can't even get the delays right. So, everybody in the comment, they're all, you guys were all having fun because you're waiting for my reaction. So
the blackout issue is so stupid. It really is.
Huh?
It really is. The blackout issue is so stupid.
It is
the fact that from another country I could watch more games than you guys can if it's being blacked out is ludicrous. It's completely ludicrous, right? All because I pay for a certain type of MLB TV, right? But the funny thing is, when I do come home, when I do come back to the States, I can't watch MLB TV because that's blacked out for me. So, there you go. So, it's always about money. It really is. It's always about money. MLB TV should be MLB TV, whether you're in the States or whether you're in another continent. It shouldn't matter. If I go back to the United States, I should still be able to watch MLB TV. But no, oddly, I can watch more Yankee games abroad than I can in New York, unless I have the Yes Network. So there's always caveats, there's always apps, there's always this, that, and the other thing just to watch a Yankee game, and it never was the case before. And it's very frustrating.
They want to bring more people in. They want to bring more people into the sport. Just have one way to watch it. Okay, well, you can give a trial too. Give out a week trial or a free month of MLB TV. You get to watch any game, major leagues, minor leagues. You want to watch the top prospects come up. Make it one set price. You know how much money you're going to make? How many people would pay for one app? How many people pay for MLB TV right now? I get it for free, thankfully, with T-Mobile, but like, you know how much money they could make from just subscriptions alone? Just to be able to watch every single game. Hey, if I want to go watch the Cincinnati Reds game right now, I can go watch it. And just to have anything available to you, if every league did that, so much money would be coming into these leagues. Everyone would be getting it because football fans, basketball fans, they'd get it on NBA TV, the League Pass. And if NFL just had their own streaming service, watch every game, like Sunday Ticket was its own thing, you just had to pay a set price for it every year, people would go crazy buying that stuff. And no blackouts. Why is it that if you're in the area, you should have cable? It's not like it was back in the day. I can't just turn on my television and connect the cable wire. You have to pay for cable service too. Just give us an app. Make it so simple to watch your sport. No blackouts, and people are going to want to watch your sports.
But the thing is, when people are buying the MLB app, they're buying it. You can't even watch it in your own. Usually people are buying it because they want to watch their team play. But their team is being blacked out. Even they'll have sometimes that I'll catch once in a while they'll show like the free game of the day. But if it's the Yankees, you still can't watch it because it's blacked out because of the network. And so they have no clue what the hell they're doing. They actually are hurting their pockets with all of this rather than helping it.
Oh, they know what they're doing. They're just targeting all the people that are gullible enough to pay for every single app just to watch their favorite team. It's shameless. It's completely shameless and it's shameful. But obviously that's a separate issue. It's nothing to do with the performance on the field, but that does get in my craw because I think the Yankees should hold themselves to a higher standard than what baseball are doing. And they should be thinking about their fans because their fans pay a hell of a lot of money to watch their product. They're still selling out Yankee Stadium, and the team is a complete joke, right? They're selling out Yankee Stadium to watch IKF pitch, right? So let's why don't we throw the fans a bone a little bit, right? And I don't care about Rizzo bobblehead day. I want some fucking cheaper prices, okay? Cheaper prices to watch the team. I think that would be much fairer, and then you can throw out all your shitty products you want. Because this shitty product is a shitty product. We're in third place. We got beat 10-2 with like a million errors, and I want to finish off on Aaron Boone being asked on the errors. Dude, does he look like he gives a shit? Like, nope. Honestly, you could never convince me that Aaron Boone looks like he really wants to manage this team that much, because he was asked about the errors and he was like, "Oh well, you know what happens." Are you kidding me? It's like this is almost every other day though. They unprepared. They play like shit, and they're throwing the ball all over the ballpark. And Aaron Boone is always like, "Well, they're just such great players. They're such wonderful players that I'm never going to criticize them." I mean, my God, it's just so exhausting. Like, Rob, what did you think of that?
I'm not surprised. When was the last time he really said something of substance? Yeah, like the Aaron Boone that I want to see during press conferences is the Aaron Boone that, even though he probably shouldn't have gotten so defensive over what Jake said on Talking Yanks, but I want to see more of that. Starting point,
I disagree with him, but at least he was human.
Right. He came out like, how dare you question what I did? And it was a little bit of like what he said, like in the 8th inning, we still have 2 more at bats, but then Jake fired back with, "Well, your offense isn't really hitting." And Boone's like, "That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous."
Yeah.
Give me a little more of that, because it shows that at least when he's on their show, he's not robotic. But when he's getting talked to by the press that everybody knows and all the same faces he's used to, he's like, well, and he just says his usual Boone turn the corner spiel. But he doesn't do that when he's talking to Talking Yanks. So maybe there is some validity to what Tats was saying earlier, like have them talk to the fans, because you might see a more human side of them, but you don't really get that with Hal Steinbrenner. Yeah. He'll give you, when he answers questions, you feel like that's Hal Steinbrenner. That's not him putting on the corporate mask. But when Brian Cashman speaks, you know you're getting that corporate mess. So like, I just wish Boone would answer questions. And if you're saying, oh, why is your defense making so many errors? Just be like, look, it was a terrible. He did say it was a terrible night. It was a poorly played night. But just stay at that. Don't be like, oh, well, you know what happens. Just be like, look, we played terribly, and the results showed it. We got to fix it. And then you can I've said this before, then you can go with the whole turn the corner nonsense. We got to flip the script.
Why are they so afraid to criticize Josh Donaldson? The guy is batting 100. Is going to 129 batting average, I believe. The last time I checked, it might be worse now. Why are they so afraid? Because I know
127.
It makes Brian Cashman look bad because he made that trade. Maybe that's the feedback. Do not criticize Josh Donaldson because it makes me look bad. But bro, they are treating him like he won an MVP as a Yankee. He's done shit as a Yankee. So why is he above just a little pointed criticism going, this guy has won an MVP and he's a gold caliber third baseman, but he's not playing like that. And I need to get that more. As Aaron Boone, he should be like, I should be getting more out of him. And I also need Josh Donaldson to get to play better, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong in saying that, but they're so afraid. They treat Josh Donaldson like he won an MVP as a Yankee, and that is a fact. Like, I've never seen a team that's so freaking afraid to say anything about this guy. Like, this guy has not done anything as a Yankee. At the moment, he just looks like any other journeyman that's come in as a Yankee and failed, right? But they're giving him this kind of unbelievable wide berth. Oh, we can't say anything about Josh Donaldson. Can't say anything about Josh Donaldson. Fuck Josh Donaldson. Fuck him. Right? Fuck him. And fuck the Yankees for that 10-2 loss. And that's how I'm going to finish this podcast. But I do want to say, I want to say thank you so much for everyone in the chat. It was a really lively chat. We got a lot of people in the chat watching today. It means a lot to us, so thank you so much. And if you haven't already done so, hit that sub button. Whether you agree with our opinions or not, we welcome all opinions as Yankee fans because that's what it's all about. Because we're all in this together. Whether you're pro-Cashman, anti-Cashman, who cares? We're all in this together. We all just want the same thing. We want this team to succeed. But yeah, thank you so much, D-Rod and Elliot, Michael H, and Jonathan, and Medina, and Tat's cousin, and Elliot. So thanks so much, everybody. And Tats, finish us off.
As always, wear your pinstripes of pride and play hard.
Have a good weekend.